nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has council had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes of September 3rd? If so, I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Any changes to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the set agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is presented.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Guests in open forum. Anybody here for guests in open forum? Seeing no one, we're going to move into committee reports. Personnel Committee. Personnel met on 9/6. We discussed the benefit renewal information that Budget and Finance had reviewed, sending it over to Personnel, and I believe we kicked it back. And then the police chief retirement time frame, which has been placed on your counter for today. This is the timeline that we worked in order to recruit, interview, and then also go into the hire process, allowing time for that individual to be backgrounded, complete their exams, and then resignation, and then a hire here. So take a look at that. If there's anything that you feel needs to be adjusted, probably let Greg know, and then we can work that. But all right, EDA.
EDA, we had a special meeting at 4:30 today, and that was to discuss item 8 alpha on our agenda tonight.
All right. Public Works, as you can see, you'll get a replay of our Public Works meeting this evening. We have 5 issues that were approved from our committee over to council this evening. And Fire Board, we also met last night. We discussed a couple of policies and procedure updates from Red Path. And then it was just kind of maintenance as normal. There wasn't really any approvals or any policies, nothing. So that was about it. Police Department / City Hall project update. Great.
The excavation has been done for footings, and you can see the rebar's been going in for the last couple of days. They did pour footings on this side today, and I think they'll finish up. The remainder of the week will be spent getting footings poured and ready for block work starting next week.
Okay, good. Any other committees that we missed? Not. We're going to move into board, committee, and consultant reports. EDA bond sale for Police Department City Hall project. Mr. LaRude.
As the council knows, we scheduled a bond sale for today, and this is kind of the culmination of the project. We chose to do a lease revenue bond, and Jessica Green from Northland Securities will be here to talk about in just a minute, but I just want to give a little background on the attachments to the resolution. Because this is a lease revenue bond, there are some documents that the city approves, basically agreements with the EDA. The first one is a ground lease, which gives the EDA an ownership interest in the City Hall property. And then the lease revenue gives responsibility of the city to do the leasehold improvements and manage the building as we currently do. And in the indenture of trust, the city will handle that for the EDA, work with the trustee to request disbursements for bond proceeds, to make bond payments, and then they will pay the bondholders. So those would, after Jessica gets done and the resolution will be before you, those will be the 3 documents along with the bond sale that you will approve tonight. And so with that, I'd invite Jessica to come up.
Mayor, council, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm giggling a little bit because the 3 of you just had to sit through all of this at the EDA meeting. So as Greg just mentioned, you have a resolution for your consideration related to the issuance and sale of $5,760,000 in public project lease revenue bonds. This will be considered Series 2024A. These are bonds that are being issued by the Economic Development Authority, assuming that the council is supportive of that. So as Councilmember Hendrickson said, the EDA met at 4:30 this afternoon, and they did pass a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of the bonds. However, those actions are contingent upon the city council taking action affirmatively, stating that they are in support of the project and of the bond sale. So as Greg went over, there was a bond sale this morning. The sale went very well. We had 2 bids come in, with Piper Sandler out of Minneapolis being the low bidder here. So the sales summary that you have in front of you provides some of the high-level detail for the bond sale. So I'll go through that quickly and then take any questions that the council may have. So proceeds here being used to finance the renovation and expansion of City Hall and the police department here within City Hall. We have a 15-year structure for the bonds. And the city will enter into a lease arrangement with the EDA and to make lease payments to the EDA. Now, you can use any revenues that are available to the city. It's our understanding, of course, that you will levy for the payment of that lease payment to the EDA. The trustee will be involved in collecting those dollars from the city and then making sure that the EDA payments are distributed to the investors of the bonds. The method of sale here today is competitive. Again, 2 bids were received, with Piper Sandler being the low bid. The rating on the bonds here is A1. Now, the city's rating that is outstanding for any of your general obligation bonds is considered AA3. So we're seeing a 1-notch difference here for this issuance, and that is because it is an annual appropriation as opposed to your general obligation bonds. Now, with the rating review, they did affirm the city's AA3 rating for any outstanding general obligation bonds. So I don't want council to feel that this is a downgrade. It is simply a reflection of the credit itself, that it is annual appropriation as opposed to general obligation. The city scores very well against Moody's methodology. In fact, they share their scorecard with us, and you score out at a AAA. The challenge for the city is that you have some concentration here in your tax base, and because of the decommissioning activities, the rating agency continues to have some concerns about that. However, they are very excited about the development that they're seeing happening here in the city and what's expected here in the city. So they're taking more of a wait-and-see approach with how they are providing a rating to the city. So depending upon how those decommissioning activities go forward, what the market value ends up looking like in the next couple of years, we're hopeful that we'll see some upward movement, but we'll see how that goes. With that, final maturity here, February 1 of 2040. We have an optional call February 1 of 2032. And then finally, at the bottom, there's just a brief table. So we went from a par amount of $5,970,000, and we're ending with $5,760,000. Reason being for that reduction is that we received premium with the bids that were received today. What that means is that investors are looking for a higher coupon or stated interest rate on the bonds, and they're willing to give you cash at the time of sale to get there. So the city effectively pays less in principal, but more in interest over the life of the bonds. However, we did also see a reduction in the true interest cost that we had estimated. So going from 4.28% to 3.71%, so a pretty nice reduction there. What that amounts to in terms of total debt service is about $355,000 in a reduction in overall debt service over the life of the bonds. We have the bid tab on the following page, so you can see the bid that came in from Piper Sandler at 3.705, and then Robert W. Baird out of Milwaukee being the cover bid at 3.85%, so about 14 basis points for the spread of that cover, so a little bit larger than we like to see, but like I said, Piper delivered a very nice bid today, so we'll go on to page 4. The pricing summary is in the middle of that page. So here's where we're looking at the actual stated rate on the bonds, or the coupon, and then comparing that with the yield. So this is in the third and the fourth column from the left. So the coupon, again, at 4%, that's what investors were looking for today. However, the yield to the city starts out at that 2.83%, and then ascending scale here out to 3.85% in 2040. So what you're seeing from the yield perspective is taking that cash into consideration, which is why we look at this on a true interest cost rather than an average coupon basis. And then we've got your debt service schedule. And finally, the last couple of pages here, are just some graphs related to sort of market behavior. So looking at the last 5 years in terms of that snapshot, and then going out longer term view over 20 years. I'll wrap up my comments there, but I am happy to take any questions that the council may have.
Any questions for Jessica? Otherwise, we have a resolution 2481 for consideration.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2481, approving the ground lease agreement, indenture of trust, continuing disclosure undertaking, and sale of bonds.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any other discussion? With none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Listen. Water truck number 2 replacement.
Chair, helping stool. It's kind of bounce down and bounce back up as needed. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. A few items for you tonight. First item we have is water truck number 2 replacement. It's RCA and Resolution 2476. So the current water truck number 2 is a 2016 Ford F-350, has about 56,000 miles on it. Per our CIP plan for the water side, it has met its replacement time frame of 8 years. Staff did go out and get quotes for the vehicle replacement, which I included in the packet. That does include the chassis, the outfitting, and then the installation of a snowplow. The concept with this is we would, instead of trading this vehicle in, we would move it into the wastewater fleet as such, and then move a truck from there over to streets, trying to keep the best vehicles we have in our fleet, and then declaring one of our older vehicles that's seeing some issues. It's a 2007 Chevy 2500 service truck. We would ask that that be declared surplus, and we would send that one off to auction. We did discuss this vehicle replacement along with the trades. I know, Tracy, I tried my best to keep it
You
short and
did.
brief so you could follow as I went, so hopefully I did well. With Public Works, and the Public Works Committee did approve it to go to council for consideration. So I outlined the vehicle costs in the RCA, included the quotes that staff obtained. The total cost for the vehicle, minus that trade-in value, would be $72,902.83. We did budget $70,000 in the water CIP for this replacement. So it's a little bit more than what we have budgeted, but it does fit within our cash policy for our water CIP fund. So what I'm looking for tonight would be a motion and a second approving resolution 2476 for water truck number 2 replacement as outlined in the RCA for a price not to exceed $72,902.83. And I will stand for any questions.
So you acquired the trade-in value, just said, what would it be worth if we traded it, and that's what you're using for?
Yeah, we took it to a dealership and asked them, what would this be worth to you? They wanted to buy it that day when we brought it in, so it was still good value for that vehicle. So we're gonna take that money out of both the domestic industrial ops and then some of the street operations to cover that cost, put those back into those funds, and then keep that vehicle in-house. It still has low mileage, it's still in really good shape. The 2007 Chevy is not quite as in good shape. It's got some tranny issues, so it's a good time for that one to go away, and it's a good opportunity to do that, so, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2476, approving the replacement of water truck number 2 as outlined in the RCA for a price not to exceed $72,902.83.
No, second thought.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Water tower number 3, valve replacement. Mr. Listen.
All right, so RCA and resolution 2477 for the replacement of a 16-inch valve on water tower number 3. There are a couple of lines that connect the lower portion or the lower, water tower 3 is essentially 2 water towers in one. So we've got the lower column and the upper bowl. So there's piping that connects the two so we can move water from one side to the other. The 16-inch valve that would be one of the isolation valves started leaking. Well, we found it when we were trying to isolate it last fall. We took some steps to try to see if we could operate it, run some water back through it, see if we could get it to stop leaking. It just never did. So we're looking to replace that valve. The reason we want to see it replaced is that we do take that lower portion offline in the fall as water usage decreases when people quit or stop watering their lawn for the season. Then we can take that offline. We don't have to keep it filled because otherwise we'd be worried about stagnant water and not enough use and keep that moving. So, of course, if that valve doesn't isolate water, then the water can leak back in and then we have problems. Our concern would be potential for freezing, which one could damage the pipes or the valves and that kind of thing. And or if it was frozen but pipes weren't damaged, but we need to use the tower, the lower portion for an emergency, the pipe's frozen, it's quite a process to try to get that thawed out. So the best bet would be to replace the valve now so we have that in working condition moving forward. This valve replacement, we did discuss it with Public Works Committee and they approved bringing it to council for consideration. Obviously, it wasn't planned in my operation budget or the CIP. It was just something that came up. Part of that is because we would expect a valve like this to last 30 to 45 years roughly. So we're not quite there, 2002. We're getting there, but not quite there yet. We did get 2 quotes for the replacement work. One local contractor and one that was in town working on a project. Due to the cost of the total replacement, we were looking to use CIP, water CIP funds to pay for the repair. I did include in your packet kind of a picture from the plan set so you can kind of see which valve we're looking to replace. I did include an overhead and 2 in case anybody forgot where water tower 3 was, just in case. So put that in there for reference. With that, what I'd be looking for tonight would be a motion and a second to approve resolution 2477 for the replacement of that water valve in tower number 3 as outlined in the RCA and for a price not to exceed $27,162. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
So I was thinking about this a little bit with, cause just to take it out of the CIP, I mean, I know it's not a budgeted thing and I don't know how you would, cause I would assume this would have came in with the original water, this would have been just part of the original cost. It's not something you normally would break out and say, okay, this gets a separate CIP item. We don't do every valve in the city.
Nope.
I was just thinking of a way to account for it instead of just taking it out of the, I don't like just taking it out of the CIP, I guess, without something being there.
I guess my plan going forward is I could include this one in the CIP. That way we'd have a way to kind of spread that cost over the lifespan and then we would be collecting through our rates to pay for that. Now, we don't do that for every other valve in the city, but these valves are a little bit different. I
Yeah,
mean, they're
they're not,
isolation
every
valves.
other valve isn't $35,000 either, but.
Yep. So I know when we, in Public Works, Mike did ask, well, when we just pay for it out of operations and we could, I guess, but it wasn't planned for there either, so that will make that line item a little out of whack if we paid for it that way, so that, in my mind, it was, I know we have funds available in the CIP and it's kind of an unplanned and fairly expensive repair, so that was the direction I was thinking.
What about just doing it as a one-time entry next year, not something that we would keep forward going, but at least if it's covered for next year, there's a line for it.
Sure.
At least you have accountability for those funds.
Yeah, I don't like just taking it out of there, I guess, that's.
Yeah.
So make sure it's listed in the CIP.
For the, as a 2025 project, we'll do it now, obviously, but then,
Okay.
that way there's still a line. It would, yeah, we'd still have to account for it in the CIP budget still yet for this year, but.
Say, Lori, I'll work with you on that one. Yep, you can do that. Yeah, then I won't put it in there as a plan for each year through replacement then, yep, okay.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2477, approving the replacement of water tower number 3 valve by Ruck Excavating for a price not to exceed $27,162.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The 212-acre well exploration, Mr. Lisson.
All right, so I have an RCA and then resolution 2478 regarding additional well exploration on the 212-acre site. So towards the end of last year, we did conduct well exploration on this site. We did identify one potential well site Trout did put in a test well, did test pumping, and we did collect a sample of the water and analyzed it for what the parameters were. Just a reminder, the samples came back and the test pumping kind of showed that this well that we currently have still in place had very low iron, similar to what we have in our other existing city wells. They estimated gallons per minute out of that well could be 400 or more, and had very acceptable nitrate rates, very similar to what we have in, I think the test was 4.4 milligrams per liter, so very similar to our existing wells, below the 10 that is the MCL defined by the Department of Health. Our goal here would be conduct additional well exploration, really to see if this site has any more potential. When we talked with Trout and asked them to set up kind of a drilling plan, if we did more, what would you want to concentrate? Their kind of idea was to focus more on the southeast side or southwest side along the river. That's where the one test well still is located, so there was potential there. And then they did propose 2 spots kind of up more north on the property, which would kind of finish a line across the entire property. So we'd get a good look at kind of a cross section of that piece and then some focus down on the area where we did find one good site. With well 7 and 8, after we did the pilot study and coming to the realization that we can't use them without treatment being added, we still need additional sources of water. One for our existing, with our water study that we completed, we'd be good in our current space till about 2030. So, and if our city starts to grow more than what was projected in that, then we would have to meet that growth. And then we also know we have things going on across the street potentially. So there might be needs that we need to meet, and so we need to continue to look for water. So this would be a good opportunity because it is our property. So we could do this, we could see what we would find in that site, and it would kind of give us a direction as to what might be the next step for our water supply system. So I did include the quote in here for what Trout was looking at doing. I did include their plan, so you can kind of see the spots they were looking at drilling on. We did work with finance to see where we would have funds for this. Finance did confirm that we have approximately $30,700 of funds in the water CIP from past well exploration planning that we didn't spend. So there's some money available there that we did not spend up to this point. The number that we would look to ask for in this resolution is price not to exceed $60,000. The goal being we wouldn't necessarily want to spend up to that number. If we do the drilling, nothing really looks good, we wouldn't do any additional test holes, we wouldn't do any test pumping, any water analysis. But if we did find 2 or 3 spots that look good, we would have funds available to do the test well, do the test pumping, take a water sample, get what the analysis is, and see, so we can kind of really tell if there's another couple of sites there, or if it's, we've kind of, we've looked in this site as kind of, we got one spot and that's really what we got. So that's the goal with doing this additional testing. As Phil would probably say, there's maybe other things that we could talk about at some point, but we can't right now. So with that said, what I'd be looking for tonight would be a motion and a second to approve resolution 2478, approving the additional well exploration on the city-owned 212-acre site as outlined in the RCA and for a price not to exceed $60,000. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
When we have an area defined, if we say we're gonna do, say, the southwest corner or whatever, I mean, how specific does, I mean, I know you'll get varying answers, you walk around with the 2 sticks or whatever, but I mean, does it have like, the reason I'm asking this question is, with Jacob's work that, his department is doing for what we're gonna do with that land, what I wouldn't wanna see is, especially when we talk about what made me think of when we said by the river is, potentially those could be higher dollar homes. We wouldn't wanna give up one of those for a well spot if it's something we could move in advance. I guess, so how movable are these, like within how many feet roughly?
I mean, well, your well's gonna be where your well is, but we can always move the water from the well to a well house that's further away. So you'd have a raw water line carrying it, so there you could still utilize that, riverfront property in the way that would allow for those nicer homes in that. And you can get all kinds of different covers for a well itself, so we would still need to maintain, access for staff to get there to inspect it and do that kind of thing, but you can put a cover on it that would make it blend into, I don't know if we've got the mirror covers like some of those new fancy hunting things yet, where it kind of reflect what you see. But they've like well 7 and 8 got kind of the stainless steel cabinets over them. I wouldn't suggest that there, but I mean, you could have something that looks very similar to the houses in the area, so it kind of blend into the surroundings. So we don't need to have a well house right next to it. You'd see basically, the pipe with the wellhead on the top, and that would be all you'd have to have right there if it was along the river, and then we could move it from the well to a well house that's situated further away.
I just would hate to see us give up an entire lot if it was something we could have moved or something
I
accounted
would
for
think
like
we could
that.
position somehow where you could get an access along an edge and get to it if you need to, and then go back out and,
Do you recall on that mapping, like where these exploration, were they up against the river?
they're pretty close. I can,
We spent a lot of time at Public Works discussing this topic
if
and
you look-
looking at,
kind of the last page. So they've got, I know people at home can't see that, but essentially there was two holes kind of towards the upper part of that property. They would look to do one on either side just to kind of finish that cut across. And then they were kind of focusing along the tree line, kind of along where the river runs on that property, and which is also kind of directly across the river from where we have well 3 on the golf course. So does that kind of help?
yeah, I just wanted them to understand, like, it wasn't right up against the river,
Yep.
but, yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is if we do this now and we do identify those spaces, then it does help Jacob and engineering as they work through that process to, utilize the space as best we can for both needs.
Cause that'd probably be an easement or something that we would carve into that land anyway, so.
Yeah, and I know we've talked with Park and Rec about, their trails is always something we want to expand on. You perhaps could have a natural trail along the river, which maybe that well would sit in that proximity, so it's kind of separated from a residential property. So, yeah, if something was found, this does give us that opportunity to kind of be in front of where it's placed and where everything is, rather than, well, there's a house there, but there's a well 5 feet from it. It's kind of tough now, so. Yep.
Or your park,
Yep.
try to put a park over there, that might be the spot to put
Yeah,
it.
you'd have an opportunity to do that too. Good question.
All right, so I'll make a motion then,
Yep,
make a motion to approve resolution, 2478, allow staff to hire trout wells to complete additional well exploration on the, city-owned 212 acre site, not to exceed 60,000.
Second.
motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
The domestic building, Mr. Listen.
5-minute break? No, I was kidding.
Yeah,
So next item we have is the domestic RAS building makeup air unit replacement. So that's, I prepared the RCA in resolution 2480 for your consideration. So the makeup air unit is the heating unit on our domestic RAS building. I did include a picture in the RCA just so you can kind of help you remember kind of where it's situated at the wastewater facility. We expect service life for this kind of unit at 15 years. We're on year 16. It's original from 2008. We did have it scheduled for replacement on the 2024 domestic wastewater CIP. We did get 2 quotes back for the replacement, which I included in the packet. We did discuss this replacement with the Public Works Committee, and the committee did approve it to come to council for consideration. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of reached the end of its life. It didn't run all last winter. We didn't spend money on repairs because some of the repairs sounded like they were gonna be pretty costly, and we thought, well, it's gonna be hopefully replaced next year. Let's let it ride. And we did keep a door open and use a different heater, so it's probably not the exact thing to do, but it worked for the winter, so. And we had a mild winter, so that helped. If we had a cold winter, that might have been different. So with that, what I'd be looking for tonight would be a motion, a second, to approve resolution 2480, approving that domestic RAS makeup air replacement by McDowell for a price not to exceed $32,760, which was the base bid for the replacement, plus the cost to integrate it with the HVAC control system. One note is that our city attorney did reach out and have some concerns related to some of the language in McDowell's kind of bid packet. So if council does approve it tonight, then we would work with the city attorney and look for their review and approval prior to authorizing McDowell to start that process, so. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2480, approving the domestic res building makeup air unit replacement by McDowell for a price not to exceed $32,760.
I'll second that.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Wastewater treatment facility storage building, HVAC plans and spec approval. Mr. Lisson.
All right, final item for you guys from me tonight. This is Resolution 2479. So in 2017, it's easy for me to say, City Council did approve the decommissioning and disposal of the in-vessel pasteurization unit, or the RDP process. So it was a biosolids process. Following that, staff started using this building because it was a nice building, it was empty, so we started using that building for storage of vehicles and equipment, and then also for a workshop. The Mammoth unit, that is the main heating unit on that building, is original from 94. So we had it due for replacement on the CIP shared between the industrial and the domestic in 2024. Because of that change in that use of that space, we did work with HR Green to complete an HVAC feasibility study for the space and determine what needed to be done to bring the space up to the current code given its current usage. HR Green, following that feasibility study and work with staff, did prepare plans and specifications, which were included in the packet tonight for this upgrade. And this step in the process we did discuss with Public Works Committee. Public Works Committee was fine moving it to council for consideration. A note, if we're given approval tonight to go out for bid, there would be no budgetary impact at this time. Obviously, we're just taking the bid, or taking the plans and specs out for bid. We'd get bid backs, and then we'd have to assess those and bring it back to council for final approval of the project at that time. I did include information in there so you could see it as far as what was needing to be done. And what I'd be looking for tonight would be a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2479. That'd be a resolution accepting plans and specifications for the wastewater treatment facility storage building HVAC upgrade and authorizing staff to put the project out for bid. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
So I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2479, accepting the plans and specs for the wastewater treatment center storage building HVAC upgrade and authorizing staff to put the project out for bid.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Job well done.
Thanks.
Administrator and staff reports. A call for a public hearing to consider the proposed vacate of Pine Street Southeast. Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, you're doing a great job. You want to do this one too? So before you tonight, we have a call for a public hearing for Pine Street. Mr. Rademacher is here as well. So the Rademacher Family Partnership and then Howie Zimmer, so Grant and Howie have both petitioned to have the street vacated. Whenever a street or any sort of easement, we've had a few of those vacations this year, just as a reminder for the public and for the council, whenever you do this, any abutting landowners of that street have to sign a petition to vacate it. In this case, both Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Rademacher have signed the petition. It's included in your packet. We've checked this just for some background. The reason for this would be for redevelopment purposes of the Bill's Superette site there. And we've attached a concept. We asked Mr. Rademacher if it was okay to share this, and it is, so the public kind of understands what the goal would be behind the site from a conceptual standpoint. A lot of what's occurring is really related to setbacks and then turning radiuses. So what the proposed plan for this would make it much safer. There would be turning radiuses, much better, a buffer against the street. It's be a good redevelopment opportunity for this site and for adjacent properties as well. From a safety standpoint, which we'll talk a little more at the public hearing, but from a safety standpoint, it also makes some sense. There's not a ton of people that use that road. Currently, we've checked with the engineer as well, and again, from a redevelopment safety and standpoint, it would be a good opportunity. So with that, we're calling for a public hearing on this to be held at the 1st of October City Council meeting, and that would be at 5 p.m. to consider the proposed vacation of Pine Street. And with that, I will stand for, one thing before I do that, there are some utilities under this road. Those do need to be maintained just based on, Beck's Pub actually uses that sanitary line and some of the others, so those utilities would need to be there. We can't just cap them off and leave them in place. So we would retain easement, and Mr. Rademacher and Mr. Zimmer are both aware of that, so.
So what happens to each property? Because you would have the city and, you know, everybody's properties that come up to here. Does everybody, do we have additional adjustments where you go over and then just put an easement on, or how does that work?
Where, you mean where the property ends up hitting the road? So if you notice on the north side, if you look at the exhibit, that Second Street entrance, I think, remains where it is with Pine Street, correct? Or does it shift? And, you know? Sounds like there may be opportunity. Yeah, so even if it shifts slightly from where it currently is, the right-of-way for Second Street would remain the same width. So even if the entrance to that shifts, it's okay there. First Street is gonna end up being mostly where it is with a few shifts on an approach. So the approaches don't necessarily need to change. Those will just change within the right-of-way. They would pull the permits needed from Public Works to do those approaches, but the road
So
itself.
the properties themselves don't change size, it's just you pull a right-of-way permit to build in
Correct.
essence into the city. Oh.
Now, in this case, though, if you notice, Mr. Rademacher is proposing making this site bigger, and that's again the vacation. So when you vacate that street, the property interests actually go back, that's split in half between each property owner. We did check this with legal, so half of the road would go to Mr. Rademacher, half would go to Mr. Zimmer. There are some agreements we understand that are in place between the parties to kind of figure out land sale of those pieces and swaps between the two. So that would all get flushed out between the parties privately, but if it's vacated, half of the road goes one way, half of it goes the other.
Is there any, who tears up the street, or I'm sure you don't wanna leave a street running right through your property there, who tears that up?
Well, and I think that'd be part of the site development that Mr. Rademacher would do, because it's gonna be all of it. I think it's pretty much all, the whole property. And then as far as the easements too, it's, checked with Randy Sabar to be about 45-foot easement total, which again, but the one side that's really key is the one that's adjacent to the building, and, Mr. Rademacher understands there'd probably be an encroachment agreement, because there'd be a slight overlap in that of the easement. We don't anticipate it being an issue, but just so we have the width, should anything occur to get into that easement. So that would have to be retained as part of the vacation. And we did check on that too, and you can retain that width, legal did. You can vacate the street while still retaining easement underneath. Does that answer your question? Okay.
The redesign or the redevelopment looks amazing. I think it'll really clean up the safety issues at that site as well. It'd be really nice.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have it as an actual street. It's always kind of the street with the
Yes.
150-foot entrance.
Do I
It
go or do you
is.
go? Who's going? Yeah.
Well, and I know Mr. Rademacher's worked with the county pretty extensively too on a lot of this, just in lining that approach up with Bank Street would also help tremendously.
I also greatly appreciate that the Rademachers are wanting to make this improvement to our city. So thank you. This is going to be beautiful.
I think, like you said, too, the turn radius, still keeping that. I know that was, like with the previous owners, I know they had which I'm assuming applies to you too. You're the customer base, a lot of people like that exact spot, because they could, you come in with a truck and a trailer, you get that, it's easy to get in there where it's not easy to get into most other places in the area. So that's, so still respecting that with that's.
So yeah, the vote tonight would be just to call for the public hearing, and then at the October 1st meeting, we would hold that hearing on the vacation.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 2482, declaring sufficiency of petition and setting a public hearing to be held on October 1st at approximately 5 p.m. to consider the proposed vacation of Pine Street Southeast.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consent agenda, Mr. LaRude.
Mayor Bertram, city council members, only two items for approval on consent agenda. First one is the revised hiring and termination report, and the second one is pay application number 2 to Apex Construction Group in the amount of $217,190.93 for the 24 City Hall Police Department renovation project. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Payment of the bills.
Motion to pay the bills?
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Does council have anything else for the betterment of Becker? I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 5:41.